What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. My guest today is Jay Anderson. He runs a YouTube channel called Project Unity. He recently set the internet ablaze when he was the first to report on the newly discovered structures underneath the Giza Pyramid. His reporting got him on mainstream media, and he even got Joe Rogan talking about him on his own podcast.
Project Unity.
What has just been announced in relation to the pyramids at the Giza Plateau and the plateau itself is so incredible, so awe-inspiring and narrative-shattering that I have been sitting here for the last hour trying to wrap my head around the implications of what we were just told.
Jay joins me to discuss this recent Giza discovery and other ancient mysteries of the past.
Even throughout ancient history of records and halls and labyrinths and different passageways under the Giza Plateau, under the Sphinx. So it's not like this claim has come out of a vacuum. There is certainly enough historical kind of data backing it up in terms of at least just claims and evidence in storytelling.
But before we start, let me catch you up to speed with a brief explanation of the discovery that, if true, could change the way we look at humanity's reflection in the mirror of history. In early 2025, a team of Italian and Scottish researchers, including Corrado Malanga from the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi from the University of Strathclyde, announced a significant discovery beneath the Giza pyramids, particularly under the Khafre Pyramid, using synthetic aperture radar tomography. They claim to have detected a vast underground complex, including 8 vertical cylindrical structures extending over 2,000 feet deep, spiral staircases, and large rectangular chambers. The findings, publicized in March of 2025, suggest a network stretching beneath all 3 major pyramids, potentially challenging traditional views of their purpose as mere tombs. However, prominent Egyptologists like Dr. Zahi Hawass have dismissed these claims as, quote, fake news, arguing the study lacks scientific rigor and peer-reviewed validation. The discovery has sparked debate, with calls for targeted excavations to verify the findings, though skepticism remains high among experts. And of course, Vetters, please hit that like button. That really helps out the videos. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, I put out videos about the UFO phenomena and other ancient mysteries every week. Let's go. All right, Vetters, look who I have in the house, Mr. Jay Anderson from Project Unity. Welcome, Jay.
Good to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely, man. Are you kidding me? Yeah, you've been very busy. You've been a busy man.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks. Bit more than I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, but in a good way, which is great in this,
No
in, doing content creation like we both do. Those kind of moments you've got to capitalize on, and really, something that you were covering that I typically don't cover, but I want to. I want to get out of, I typically just cover UFO or UAP stuff, but then other things will pop up that, ancient mysteries and whatever, right? Ancient history, all that. I'm thinking, I love that stuff, but I don't cover it too much. But I started to kind of, getting into it, and this whole, I don't know what the name of what you call it. I just call it like the Giza discovery. I'm not really sure what.
I don't know if we've got like an established title for it yet, but it's just like the Giza WTF, right? Like, what's going on here? This is wild.
That's what we're going to call it.
What is happening under the plateau? Yeah,
the Giza WTF.
that was a big moment, and I think it's caused a lot of rifts between the alternative and mainstream, arenas of history and archaeology. And it certainly made me very interested in going back to Egypt, because I went a few years ago, and I had an amazing time, but I don't really feel like I had the consciousness that I have now in terms of researching prehistory and looking at the implications and the archaeology and like the very kind of specific things to look out for when you're in these temples or just on the plateau and spotting like machining tool marks and things that just don't make sense. I'd love to go back, so that's kind of in the plans for sometime this year, I hope. But yeah, that was an incredible claim by these Italian scientists, and I really hope they can completely back that up.
Yeah, so let's, let's, if you don't mind, like give us just a quick 30, 60-second kind of run through of what exactly was proposed. And then we'll kind of maybe get into some of the myths that are out there that maybe you want to bust, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And also one thing I'll touch on, by the way, because you said you're just kind of starting to
Yeah.
flirt with these topics and these subjects,
Mhm.
it all ties in. Like it ties into UFOs and
Sure.
the phenomena and these strange things. Like all of this seems to be underneath an umbrella, and especially when you get deep into the prehistory, you start seeing very advanced techniques and sophisticated engineering that just suggests that they had a very different level of consciousness to what we attribute to the Neolithic and Stone Age. But yeah, in terms of the pyramids and the Khafra pyramid project, and that's the second pyramid on the Giza plateau, the second largest in the middle. So there's a team of Italian scientists. The kind of guy who's leading it is what's his name? Corrado Malanga. He's a chemist. But the guy who's really responsible for the findings is Filippo Bionde, Professor Filippo Bionde. And I had an interview of him recently, which is the first interview they've done in English because everything's been in Italian, which has also been cause for some of the noise and miscommunication and misunderstanding behind what the team's been claiming. But they did like a 4-hour presentation in Italian, like last month. What was it last month? Time's been flying so fast for me now.
Yeah, it was.
It was last month, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the 15th or something like that.
Mhm.
And they basically made this incredible claim that their scans that they've been using synthetic aperture radar, using satellites, and a patented technique. This is where a lot of the miscommunication came in from satellite experts and radar experts saying this is not possible with this technology. Filippo Bionde, this Italian scientist, has a patented technology where they integrate like Doppler sound and light readings into the sequencing at the same time. Obviously way above my head. This is not something I'm technologically versed in whatsoever, but they're deploying this technology, and through that method they have claimed to find these absolutely gigantic structures coming down from the base of the Khafra pyramid. So you've got these multiple spiraling structures going about 630 meters down into the ground and then connecting into this 80 by 80 meter diameter box. And then there's other signatures that have popped up suggesting even 2 kilometers worth of subterranean engineering depth. So like it's just, I mean, there's a lot of stories and there's been a lot of claims even throughout ancient history of records and halls and labyrinths and different passageways under the Giza Plateau, under the Sphinx. So it's not like this claim has come out of a vacuum. There is certainly enough historical kind of data backing it up in terms of at least just claims and evidence in storytelling. But then you have this this team who apparently they've done over 200 tomographies from over a year using 2 computers, scanning 24/7 and running through the results. And Filippo Bionde, the guy, he basically came with these results and didn't believe them for the first few months, and they just kept going back and rescanning using 2 different satellite companies, and they kept coming back with these same results of these spiraling structures. So yeah, it's still early days, and there's been a lot of comments from people, including people in the mainstream archaeology and history world, who have said that this is impossible, that the technology doesn't exist, and a lot of that has been debunked in terms of the explanation for how they were actually able to do this, because they're not just firing a magical laser beam down into the ground and penetrating 2 kilometers of earth. It's actually measuring the subsurface vibrations. So it's just like vibrations on 30 centimeters down into the ground, and they're picking up seismic noise and seismic signatures that are coming from structures below the ground. And it's a different technique to the way it's been attributed. But yeah, it's a very very crazy claim to make, and I think that that's what's caused so much of a fire in the mainstream media with it. And also the way it was presented, I've critiqued that as well, because it wasn't presented in a very professional way, or at least it wasn't released necessarily in a very professional way. It kind of came through a couple of these little researchers, and because I'm plugged into that world, I picked up on it. And then suddenly I make a video, like a 7-minute video, like, oh my god, check this out, and it goes to like 500k views, and everyone's talking and asking me questions. I'm not even part of this group, I'm not even part of this project. I just reported on it, like, guys, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then I started to dig into it, and then I was lucky enough to have them on for an interview, and they really clarified. I'd recommend for people if haven't seen it to go check out the interview. English is not their first language, but I really feel like they did a great job of explaining quite clearly the technology. So yeah, this is a developing story. It's only really just happened. There's no peer review. We'll just have to see where it goes. But the Egyptian government has been anything but forthcoming in the past in regards to, incredible claims and archaeological desires to dig anything up. So I don't see this getting any movement other than maybe additional scans and confirming it through that method, non-invasive.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I mean, someone's going to have to take it up. and run with it. Either the same researchers who brought it out, or scientists that brought it out, or people are going to have to get motivated by it, right, to do more work with it.
Yeah,
Talking
and
about it,
it's
going,
also real quick. Sorry, man. I just want
no, no,
one last
please.
little point I'd make is it's really opened up this corridor of space-based archaeology, which is, an incredible idea that you could actually deploy satellites across the world and find these incredible subterranean structures through this technology. So if it gets proven, the implications are pretty wild for being able to find things underground. And then you have to consider the fact that there's a national security issue there, right? I mean, how many deep underground military bases that are not on maps would be revealed through this type of technology? Because Filippo Biondi's used it to actually find the not find because they know where it is, but to actually map out the Gran Sasso laboratory in Italy, which is deep within a mountain. It's like 2 kilometers inside a mountain, and they used this Doppler synthetic aperture radar technology to create imagery of the Gran Sasso laboratory deep inside the bedrock. So it's proof of concept that this is actually something that seems to be possible, and you just got to wonder what kind of doors that's going to open up and what kind of red flags that's going to send into the national security labyrinth.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't, that's very fascinating. And of course, there's got
Mm.
to be shit buried underground all over this planet that we don't know. You know what I mean? They're
Oh, no
finding
doubt, no doubt.
all kinds of things. And this isn't even go. I mean, if we're finding dinosaur bones, right? We're finding things from millions of years ago. So stuff that's more preserved from the last 10, 15,000 years or 5,000 years. No, that's exciting. I did want to get your reaction to, this did go viral. I covered it. I mean, this is not something I typically cover, but I thought this is so exciting. Like, I want to get into this more. So I used what you kind of reported on as a way to jump in myself. And, they brought your video up on Joe Rogan, dude. Right? How cool was that? That's got to be
Yeah, that
pretty
was wild.
exciting,
That was
right?
wild. Yeah. Someone sent me a message like, dude, you're on Joe Rogan. I was like, what do you mean I'm on Joe Rogan? It's like,
Yeah.
that's, check my phone, watch the video. I was like, holy shit. Like, that's crazy, man. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. That was a cool little moment.
Dun dun dun. I love the music. And geometry, so you know it's real.
You got to appreciate the dramatic intro.
Project Unity.
What has just been announced in relation to the pyramids at the Giza Plateau and the plateau itself is so incredible, so awe-inspiring and narrative-shattering that I have been sitting here for the last hour trying to wrap my head around the implications of what we were just told. So this is pretty much breaking news because the new findings were announced on the 16th of March at a press conference held by the team who were studying the Great Pyramid of Giza with a non-invasive technology that was first developed by Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga called synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography.
Fuck, that's a
This
mouthful.
was used to explore the internal
Chiropractor
structure
talk.
of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this method leverages the analysis of micro movements typically generated by background seismic activity to achieve a high resolution full 3D tomographic imagery of the pyramid's interior and subsurface components. The recent findings from deploying this technology are nothing short of mind-blowing, because what's been discovered is that there are huge structures coming down from the base of the pyramid deep into the bedrock, in fact over 600 meters deep, which then connects to structures that extend up to 2 kilometers below the surface of the ground. 2 kilometers. Massive internal structures connected to the base of the pyramid and extending deep, deep down. This is what we know so far.
Absolutely.
cool
Did you
moment.
get any Joe reach out, or did you try to reach out or see if maybe you
Well,
could
he's
go
been
on and
he's
talk
been
about that?
following me. He's been following me for a little while on X, and like we've had a couple of DM exchanges, but I'm not trying to blow the guy's DMs up. I'm just trying to tread
Sure.
really carefully. Like I don't want to be
Yeah.
spamming him like Joe, watch this, read this, Joe. So like I'm just, I've messaged him a couple times. If he wants to hit me back, he can hit me back. Like that's kind of how I'm playing it, cool and relaxed. But it would be great. Obviously, if he invited me, I'd be on the plane like that day. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, he's not far from me. He's in Austin. I'm in Texas too. Yeah, that's sick, dude. I
Nice.
think that's I don't want to say a goal, but it's definitely like one of those things. If you're someone like us, if that happens, that's a pretty big deal, right? It's a big platform to sort of
oh
get
yeah,
noticed on, or
it's
to
a
be
big
talked about.
milestone. It's a big
Yeah.
milestone.
for sure.
Yeah,
Did you
it
get
is. It
any
is, you know, and
uptick
like
in
I've been a big fan of
viewers?
Joe Rogan anyway. Yeah, I did. And by the way, I think we've just got a little bit of latency, so I'm sorry if I interrupt you because it's coming
All good.
slightly delayed on my side, I
Yeah.
think. But yeah, I
Yeah.
got a pretty significant boost because it was a bit of a triad. I had Alex Jones, I had Piers Morgan, and Joe Rogan in like the space of a week, and I was blown out by it. But it really did give me a good boost on YouTube. I'm almost at 100K subscribers now, so you know that because my YouTube was a bit stagnant. Thank you. Yeah, my YouTube got demonetized not that long ago, and thank God it got remonetized before all of this kicked off
Oh
because
shit.
that would have been such a kick to the gut
Oh,
if this had all happened and I hadn't had my monetization back. But yeah, because I was like demonetized for over a year and they hadn't given me
what?
any good reason for it. Yeah, dude, like I was deep in the demonetization void for a while, and then they just like literally gave it back to me 3 weeks or 2 weeks before all of this. So that's a sign.
That's a sign, dude. I
That's a
didn't know
sign.
that. I didn't know you were
Yeah,
demonetized, bro. That's
yeah.
horrible.
Mm.
Yeah, and there's no real way to like pressure. Like, there's no sense of urgency on YouTube's part to be like, yeah,
No,
let me
not at
take care
all.
of this creator real quick.
Not at all,
Um,
not at all. But you know,
well,
you do kind of balance a bit of a tightrope on YouTube, depending on what kind of content you put out and what kind of subjects you touch on. You know, is this
yeah,
going to get me in trouble? Or even just leaving a comment now, if you swear in a comment, it's like, are you sure you want to leave this comment? It's like, oh my god,
sure.
like he's really nanny stating over here, aren't we? It's really like just like telling me what to do and how to sit and where to stand. Like I don't like
Yeah.
it.
No, you're right. Well, that's good. So you get a lot of attention from bringing this story out, and doing the first English interview with these Italian scientists, which I watched and covered on the channel. And you did a great job. It was a really good
Thanks, man.
interview. I thought his English was pretty good.
Oh, this is great. Yeah, I think crushed it.
Yeah, he did a great job. I mean, my wife's from Spain, and English isn't her first language either. And I mean, my mom's from Mexico. I've been
Yeah.
listening to accents my whole life. So I thought he did a great
To be
job
honest,
as
it
far
just
as
like
English goes.
anyone who can switch to their like second not very used language and do a really important interview. I mean, like hats off to anyone who's capable of
Props.
that. You try and get me to speak a second language, it's impressive.
Yeah,
There's a level of arrogance, where it's like, oh well, can they speak English? It's like, well, they shouldn't have to
totally.
speak English, but it's so cool that they can, right? And they're trying
Sure.
for us, and they're actually giving it their go. So yeah, it was a good talk, and they're good people. I'm actually going to be hosting a Q&A with them in North Carolina near the end of June, which is going to be interesting.
Oh hell yeah. Was there any part of that interview that didn't get covered, or a question you wish you would have asked, or something that got left on the table?
No, not really. I feel like I just wanted them to explain the difference between the conventional technology that was being debunked as not possible to make these findings and the
Sure.
the patented technology that Bionde had proposed and was using, because he patented this back in 2022, and it's just important that people understood that, because this is the thing that annoyed me. I mean, when I was on the Piers Morgan bit, obviously I was not on the panel, but I listened to the panel afterwards and watched it. And you got people like Flint Dibble who just say that this has got all of the all the hallmarks of pseudoscience, and that there's no testing. Again, he didn't know about the Gran Sasso laboratory that had been tested on. He didn't know about the Mosul dam in Iraq where they had done this testing, and he's doing testing on bridges for structural integrity using this technology, and it was patented in 2022. And it really annoys me because people like Flynn Dibble will say like, oh, I'd love for this to be real. I'd be the first person to admit it's real. It's like, well, clearly not, because the information that would have allowed you to understand that it's not just pure pseudoscience and there is an actual patent and it's been, done proof of concept, that's all available if you wanted to research it, but you didn't want to research it. And then you sit back and say, I would love for this to be true, but it's bullshit. And it's like, that's so disingenuous, because you clearly have an agenda to go onto, I mean, we know this from the UFO subject, people who are on extreme debunker side of that, and there's no way to sway them. And it just is it's so frustrating when these people are given the position of the rational, skeptical, academic, and it's like, but they haven't actually done any research into this. They've just immediately gone to that knee-jerk reaction. And so it really frustrated me watching that, just going like, you know what, it took me half a day to find this stuff out, bro. What's wrong with you? Like, they're not trying very hard.
No, that's a really good point. That's a really good point, because you should be able to be swayed one way or the other, right? For something being BS and something not being BS and being compelling, right? You should
Yeah.
be able to be swayed. And if you're not, there's something wrong. You've set an anchor down when you should be set sail at all times, essentially. Which, yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, I don't think someone like Flint he would never admit to something that he considers pseudoscience, because I think he feels, oh, that would then bring people on top of me and be like, oh, see, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
So
and also
he does have that in the way.
His dad was really well known for being an archaeologist and like kind of specialized in the Stone Age. So he's got a very, even a familial vested interest in upholding a type of that was my dad's work, and now I'm continuing it on. So there's all this kind of ideological baggage that comes with some of this stuff, continuing on the family name and going to, the right university and learning the right things. And you just get channeled through such a restricted corridor of information when you go through academia that you don't encounter all of this stuff naturally. So then someone says it and you just go, well, that's ridiculous. That's a conspiracy theory. And then you actually realize that you're claiming that the pyramids are tombs and there's never been a mummy recovered from inside them. It's like, where's your evidence? Like, where is your platform of actual evidence for the things that you claim? And, so I think there's a lot of ideological and like kind of dogmatic bias that goes on. It's very religious in a sense, like some of these models that have been held for so long. And I think one of the biggest disruptors and like one of the biggest issues for the mainstream model of history was Göbekli Tepe, because it just completely destroyed the narrative. This is like, I think 3600 BC, that was when like basically nothing was supposed to be happening. Then suddenly 9600 BC, you've got Göbekli Tepe popping up. So thousands of years past the narrative point, completely decimates it. And so, we're in a weird time where a lot of things are coming under strain and stress in terms of models, whether it be in science or, sociology or, politics, geopolitics and history, the UFO subject, consciousness. It just seems like the models and narratives that have been held onto for a very long time are coming under a lot of stress. And I would like to think that that's actually some form of an evolutionary dynamic. Like, it's just a natural phase of human evolution. We're removing some of the baggage, and that comes through, the dissolution of models and the complete breakdown of certain elements that we thought were so real and so true and so foundational. And then they get removed. And, you can either freak out about that or you just develop and move on and grow. And that's what humans, that's what we do, right? We strive in adversity and we strive when the chips are against us. And I think when you have the rug pulled from underneath you, if we found out, for example, that there was just this lost eon of history where there was something really incredible going on this planet, I think that could do a lot to change people. I think that could do a lot to our consciousness collectively.
Sure, man. I mean, I've always, I don't know if perturbed's the right word, but I've always been a little annoyed when I've been watching some History Channel documentary and they're like, oh, we found this bowl from, whatever era. They must have used these, they use these bowls forever. You found one bowl, dude.
Right.
That's like if somebody found a cup I have in my cupboard, and we're like, oh, all humans use that cup, or this civilization. They take a lot of things and extrapolate it.
Yes.
And then make it sort of this,
and then it gets taught
narrative
to you in school, and then it gets taught to you. And that's
exactly.
The thing is, like, when you don't look at it, when you don't actually research or chip away at it, and you just expose this information as you go through life, you assume it's based on mountains of evidence and really well thought out, well surveyed across the whole world. These guys have really done their work. And actually, like you said, they just pick up a bowl and go, well, I guess they use these bowls then. And it's like, well, that's not real science, guys.
Yeah.
And then you find, a jug in the same pit that's 1,000 years too advanced in its machining, capabilities. It's like, well, how is this possible? And they just leave that alone. They don't want to talk about those. Like the Egyptian jugs. There's so many Egyptian jugs. A brilliant collection actually under, I think, Christopher Dunn, who's a researcher and Egyptologist out there. And like, these jugs, the machining on them is like on par or above par to modern machining capacities. And so, you have that stuff sitting next to just normal clay pottery, and you have to wonder, like, what exactly is going on here? And I kind of have the idea that this kind of Stone Age and Bronze Age and Iron Age, and there's elements of truth to it, but just like our world, there was classified programs back in ancient Greece and ancient Rome. They had a very significant structural hierarchy of government and scholars. Like, the edifice was there for that type of secrecy to be held, and we know that they did. So I think it's just a very similar thing when you get things like, are you familiar with the Antikythera mechanism, like the first computer that was found? Okay,
I've seen a picture of that.
found in a shipwreck off the island of Antikythera, and it's like, it's got differential gearing, which wasn't found again until 14th century clockmaking in Europe. So that's like 1,450 years before that differential gearing would appear again. But you don't see Antikythera mechanisms littering Greece. So it's like a classified technology. That's what I would think, is that they were using older schematics, older information, maybe from Sumeria and Mesopotamia, because they were looting these places. They had all of these different ancient scrolls and codices from these countries, and Greek fire, these weird anomalous inventions they had. Roman concrete, this is something I covered in a video recently. They had self-healing self-healing concrete that was based on like nanoparticle distribution of lime and volcanic ash, and we don't even know how to do it today. So MIT recreated this concrete in 2023, but they had to use synthetic variants. They still don't know how to create this concrete that gets harder over time. It gets stronger over time. When a crack appears in it and water enters the crack, this weird process, because of what it's made out of, creates this like crystalline like quartz that hardens and like stops the crack from happening. So they like these weird completely beyond next generation technologies for the time, Antikythera mechanisms and self-healing concrete, and it just pops up out of nowhere, and you have to wonder, where were they getting that information from? Because it's not represented across the vast swathes of that ancient world. So it's almost like hidden knowledge, hidden fragments of information being kept by, secret groups and like scholarly groups. And it just shows that we don't really know what's going on when it comes to advancement in history. There are some fascinating anomalies, man. I've been digging into a lot of that recently.
No, that's awesome. I definitely want to start covering a lot of that more.
There's so much there. There's so much there.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating because, not that the UFO phenomena isn't fascinating, but I can't go to a museum and see the Roswell UFO. Right?
Yeah,
I can't
exactly.
go to the, you know what I mean? So this stuff is like really there. I proposed to my wife at Chichen Itza, which is one of the wonders of the world, right? And we went out there and we backpacked all of Quintana Roo, which is this part of Mexico where all the jungles are and all that stuff. And, I've been through all of that. I mean, I'm Mexican myself, so I grew up kind of going to those things and Merida and all that area. And when you're out there and you're out, and forget Chichen Itza, which is absolutely mind-blowing, but there's all these other places that are off the beaten path, aren't really on the maps. Tourists aren't going there because you got to kind of rent a car and drive out in the middle of nowhere. You just start to realize how vast these areas are. That's so so much that's uncovered. But also when you see some of these things, you just think, this is mind blowing how well this is put together and how well it's preserved. And there's just more to our history than we know, for sure.
And then you find
trying
out,
to box that in is insane to me.
And then you find out, like, alongside the beauty, it's aligned celestially. It's aligned to the equinox and the solstice.
Exactly.
It produces novel acoustic signatures because it was tuned harmonically. Like, there are so many different techno signatures embedded within these prehistoric and like stone building projects, and similarities globally across scale. Like, this cyclopean stone building where you have these massive stones that fit together like jigsaw pieces, almost like they've been mushed and smushed together. That's all over the world, from Egypt to Greece to Peru. So this is like a signature of something that I would consider to be a global pattern, and perhaps a civilization that was global in its influence and its reach in that prehistoric era that we attribute to these kind of like cavemen. And it's an embarrassment when you think about it. Like, when you really think about Stonehenge or these areas in Ireland and across the world, and the multi-ton stone weights, the alignments, that's what's even more amazing. I mean, the multi-ton stones alone should make people go, how did they do that without wheels, without pulleys, without any tools? We're talking, at least from the perspective of mainstream models, deer hide tents and wooden spears and maybe, a piece of sharp rock wrapped around a stick. Like, that's the kind of technology we're talking about. Somehow they managed to celestially align multi-ton stones and, create acoustic novel waveform patterns through these distributions and use incredibly hard stone. That's one of the other things, is that they're not using like the really soft material. They're using like anderite and diorite and like these really tough granites, like extremely hard stones. So, it's such a weird discrepancy when you look back at what's actually present in like that Neolithic stone building, Stone Age period, and you match it up with what we're told about what humanity was doing at that time, and it makes absolutely zero sense, to the point where it's almost insulting, because it doesn't match. It doesn't match at all. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago that they found out that some of the stones from Stonehenge came from a quarry in Scotland. So they had to cross water. They had to cross a body. Like, this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You know, and it makes you wonder what was happening at that period that apparently requires some form of a cover-up, because there's clearly knowledge being hidden. I mean, one of the things I touched on in a recent video was just the apostolic archives of the Vatican, and the fact that they have over 53 miles worth of shelving in the apostolic archives. Did you know that? 53 miles worth of shelving to hide all of this history that you don't get access to. It works the same way as a special access program of compartmentalization, and, you know, the way in which you get access. You have to be a specific scholar. It's criminal, man. It's really criminal.
Yeah, no, that's well said. You know, I will say that I'm actually open to it all. I'm actually still open to the idea that our ancestors actually built those things without some other civilization. But, you know, I'm not saying, I don't know, right? I don't know, but I am still open. I think humans are quite capable of a lot of things, given, you know, time and resources, and they'll make it happen one way or the other. I just don't know how they did it. Could another civilization? Sure.
Well,
but I also, it's like, I think, again, I don't know anything. Okay. I'm an idiot, but I think, okay, you know, how do these things pop up in different civilizations when they had no contact with each other? You think, how is this possible? There must have been some overarching thing. But I think, well, what about the wheel? Right? The wheel is, you know, it seems like maybe these are obvious technologies or advancements you would make regardless of interference. If that makes sense.
I think so. Things like the wheel and like bow and arrow, spear, hammer,
throwing
ladder,
something, right?
Like like these are things that you would expect in general to kind of develop almost independent of each other in different areas once they hit a certain level of. But when you're talking about like cyclopean stone building of multi-ton stones, and they're like smushed together and like, you know, almost like the stone has been softened, or like incredible geometry that mirrors the Fibonacci, or like encodes pi into it. You know, that's the kind of stuff where you go, well, that's above the threshold of creating a bow and arrow, or like, you know, basic tool supplement. This is knowledge that's like geodetic knowledge, geophysical knowledge, geoenergetic material knowledge in terms of what the materials are capable of. Like, there's so much going on there. So that's why it's like, okay, when this is a shared thing that's popping up everywhere, that implies something very different. Very different.
No, that's a good point. And at the end of the day, I still consider it a mystery. And I think anyone trying to just define, no, this is exactly what it was, and this is what happened. It's like, well, I'm not open to that. We're not there yet. And even if we get there, it could still change, because you uncover something else. You know, you dig up something else, or like these Italian scientists, right? All of a sudden discover something.
Exactly.
That we thought we had it all figured out. So I got this is what I would ask you, Jay. Like, what do you think? You know, two parts. One, what do you think is under the Giza, the Khafre pyramid? What do you think that is? And then second, what is your theory on, you know, this other potentially civilization advance, whether it be, you think it's like extraterrestrial, interdimensional, you know, just what do they call it? Ultra terrestrials? They were here the whole time, sort of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just, you know, spitball here.
Yeah. I mean, for starters, what's under the Khafre pyramid, it's very interesting. I mean, there's so many different implications with the pyramids. I'm very interested in what Nikola Tesla thought about the pyramids, because he definitely considered those to be almost a bit of a template upon which he based things like the Wardenclyffe Tower and this idea of transduction of energy from the ionosphere, and, you know, using this electromagnetic energy. And there's been a lot of studies on like the weird electromagnetic behavior of the pyramids. It seems to charge at the bottom and release at the top. And you have to remember that back in the day, these things were encased in this incredible limestone with a gold cap, which is a, you know, conductor. So this is all weird technological hallmarks. And then the dimensions of the pyramid that actually encode the radius of the planet, and these incredible celestial incursions that are happening in the pyramid, the alignment with Orion. You know, there's a lot of technology. In fact, I would almost argue regardless of what's underneath the pyramid, that the pyramids themselves are almost time capsules of knowledge. They have to be reverse engineered. The mathematics that they were using, the principles of astronomy they were using, the principles of acoustics that they understood, all of it's encoded into the pyramid if you can start to kind of take it apart mentally, intellectually, as a piece of information to be decoded. You know, how would an alien race, not that it was alien, but how would like an alien race give us information kind of encoded in a fourth dimensional object or something you had to bring out and like pass the information through, right? And that's almost like a civilizational capstone. Then they talk about like the halls of Amenti, the lost records, these records of the pre-flood era, the antediluvian era, Atlantis. You know, Atlantis, the story comes from Egypt. It comes to us from Plato, but it comes from his relative, his like great-great-grandfather Solon, who went to Egypt and spoke to the priests there, and they gave him the story of Atlantis. So there's the implications of it being a hall of records. And I think it was Edgar Cayce, the very famous spiritualist and psychic and you know, very well-known individual in that arena, who made this prophecy about, you know, the halls of Amenti, or the halls of records being opened up underneath the pyramids of Egypt. And a lot of people are referencing that now because of this recent claim, and it's like, oh, you know, Edgar Cayce was right. But there's a lot of statements like that throughout time about these labyrinthian halls. So maybe a hall of records, if I wanted to go super exotic with it, you know, these coils, it's like, oh my god, is it a Tesla technology? Like, is it some like mind-blowingly, like almost like you want to throw up because it's just so obscene. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is copper coils going down or something? Like, you know, there's a lot of implications, and especially like, you know, you get down to if they're down at 2 kilometers, if that's really true, got to think of the pressure, the heat. You know, this is serious depths that we're getting to now, and like, how are they reinforcing that? How are they building that? So yeah, in terms of what's underneath the pyramid, I don't know, man. Like, I think the Egyptian government's been down there. I think they've been down there with their own little kind of like SEAL Team 6 versions that have been, you know, exploring and doing classified archaeology. I mean, of course they have, right? I mean, it's just sitting there for them. Like, of course they have. Over the years, they've done incredible levels of deep dives, and people like Zahi Hawass, the former Minister of Antiquities for Egypt, he's contradicted himself time and time again about there being a lack of tunnels and this, that, and the other. And then they get discovered, and then he goes down into them and takes a selfie and is like, how cool is this? It's just like, ugh, like, you know, like, this is really frustrating. But yeah, man, like, what was happening? This is the thing. Like, we don't know. But what I would say is that even though we don't know what was really happening in prehistory, it definitely wasn't what they're teaching us. That's 100%. Like,
yeah,
that
I agree with that.
I would die on that hill. That it's absolutely not the Stone Age kind of loincloth wearing Neanderthals, and like maybe there was a subsection of the species that was like that, but there was some other things going on here. I mean, the fact that, again, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, that whole region was believed to just be hunter-gatherers, because there's no evidence of any sort of advanced stone building progression up to Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe just pops up out of nowhere. It shouldn't exist. And so, you know, this idea that the hunter-gatherers were responsible is ridiculous. We have, in this modern era, in 2025, we have Sentinel Island and places where completely indigenous cultures are living as they were living thousands of years ago. They haven't changed a single thing. And they're living next door to civilizations that have AI and, you know, superconductors and quantum computing. So how you know, irrational is it to believe that maybe there was an adjacent civilization that was developed alongside this? And I think there's a really interesting window of time before the Younger Dryas, like 12,800 years ago, when you were supposed to have this Younger Dryas cataclysm, this rise in sea levels, and this is where you get all the flood stories around the world. And we've now taken that back to this point, the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the raising of the floodwater. And so, you know, you go before then, and you actually had a really interesting window just before, just after the last ice age, and like before the Younger Dryas. You had a window of like several thousand years where there was relative stability in like selective pockets of the world, and places like the Middle East and in Egypt, where it was actually not a desert; it was a flourishing, you know, it was a flourishing oasis essentially. And so, you know, when you think about how we have gone from essentially horse and cart to smartphones and AI in about 150 years, like barely anything, right? Like a zip in the pan. What were they maybe capable of doing in several thousand? If there was undisturbed areas of the world, it doesn't have to be every single aspect of every country was developing like we are right now, but maybe certain pockets had the opportunity that others didn't, and became extremely advanced, and then started maneuvering out and spreading their knowledge. And suddenly, what do you get? You get all these wisdom, like civilizer gods appearing in different cultures, who appear out of the oceans or out of the skies and teach them how to be civilizations. And yeah, it leads into the UFO subject. Tom DeLonge would, if he was here with us right now, I'd be like, it's the Greek gods, like it's the Greek gods, man. Like they came and they left and now they're back again. And that's the thing, is like all these pantheons of gods and the influence they've given us over time. It makes me wonder about the rise and fall of civilizations, and whether something is in some way playing into that. Are we being kept in a perpetual state of rise and fall? Because if we rise too much, we become something very powerful, and maybe there's something out there that doesn't want that to happen. I keep that option open for sure, because I know that there is some element of reality to the UFO subject, and so there's something to be said about other intelligences influencing this whole thing. Jacques Vallée would say the same about religions, and the potential for that.
Yeah, no, well said, man. Yeah, I think clearly there's a spectrum of intelligence currently, right, on this planet. You've got the top of the top, and then idiots like myself, right? There's everything in between, and
don't be so harsh on yourself, man.
Well, come on, it's fine. I it doesn't bother me, but I think back then the idea that there was just this uniform, right, knowledge, and like you're saying, right, it seems impossible to me. There's always a spectrum across everything. So clearly back then, I used to live in Pennsylvania amongst the Amish. Right, in my early 20s for a few years.
Culture,
yeah, absolutely. You're living next to people who are still riding buggies around town with horses, no electricity, no phones. Living like it's 200 years prior.
They will like be absolutely fine if the solar event happens. They're the ones that will just be chilling.
Absolutely,
I've got no issue here.
What's funny is the Amish were known for fixing your electronics and your more like, I guess I would say, like, your lawnmower went out, your car. They couldn't own those things, but they could fix them like nobody's business. So you would take that to them to work on, any sort of little thing you had like that, a clock, a toaster, or whatever. They would work on it. They would fix it.
I wonder why that happened. That's kind of
I don't know. Yeah, it was very interesting that it was like that, but that's what it was. And food, you go get fresh food from them. But regardless, this idea that there wouldn't be the spectrum back then as well, like you're saying, that, there could be these little pockets of, whatever we want to call it, more advanced, or that's just where they were. I don't know where you start to get into the label of advanced, because that has to be in comparison to something else, right?
For me, the label of advanced comes in, and it's the prehistoric period, because there's a lot of interesting stuff in the ancient Greco-Roman, Mesopotamian, Sumerian, but the prehistoric period, where there's meant to be nothing going on, and you have these really interesting megalithic sites and these dolmens and henges and things like this. The advancement, in my opinion, comes from global patterns of celestial knowledge, of astronomical knowledge, of geodetic knowledge in relation to putting a lot of these dolmens, and by the way, for people who don't know, a dolmen is one of those ones where you have the stone roof, like it's like a few stones stacked and then a stone roof, and some of them are multi-ton, like massively heavy. Like how they even put them together is one thing, but a lot of them sit on geological fault lines, where it's actually this is something that they call ley lines in the New Age spiritual community, but it's real. Like, the Earth produces electromagnetism, and there are specific fault lines and kind of hydrocurrents that actually carry electromagnetic energy, and a lot of these dolmens and henges and sites sit on these fault lines. So you've got this geodetic alignment, then you've got the celestial alignment with equinoxes and solstices. Then you find out that they're actually, a lot of them, acoustically tuned, so that when you're standing in them and you're singing or praying, there's a novel acoustic resonance. It's engineered purposefully, which we now in modern science have discovered that acoustic resonance can influence consciousness and can change your brainwave state. The Monroe Institute of Applied Sciences, binaural beats, all this kind of stuff, and that's the type of signatures that we're seeing in these sites. And again, it's global, and it's before our time of understanding history. And it just feels like they're using the Earth as a technology more so than we are with our very artificial wires and cables and, batteries and generators. The materials that they use can produce electricity, so they're piezoelectric, things like rose quartz granite. Any sort of stone that has a high concentration of quartz embedded into it is very electrically conductive. and it can be this conductivity, this production of electricity can be promoted through acoustic vibration. So you find that these things are acoustically tuned to specific vibrations, and the materials that they're made out of produce electricity upon vibrational stress. So you start putting it together, and it feels like, dude, it feels like some Avatar thing. Like they were on a completely different type of developmental avenue to us. We've gone down smashing atoms together and ripping things out of. They were aligning things to the natural flows, the natural currents, the natural harmonies, the celestial cycles. And we laugh that stuff off now as New Age, but especially as we're beginning to understand how energies in the universe work. And, you know, when there is a planetary alignment, there is a concentration of energy coming towards the planet. And so it's not New Age woo-woo spiritual. It's actually a form of science, a very holistic, kind of natural, raw form of science. And I think that they managed to get that through intuition, shamanism, psychedelic experiences, meditation, kind of going into themselves, seeing these fractals, trying to recreate them, creating, you know, because all of it is harmonic and geometric and fractal like, and it just feels like they're mimicking nature at a very fundamental level, not just through the actual structure, but when you get deep into your own mind and you see it's made of crazy psychedelic kaleidoscopes. It's like, well, that's kind of what they're creating here with these weird patterns, and it starts to crisscross out over the world as these amazing geometric forms of lines connecting from one site to another site. So yeah, dude, like that to me is a type of advanced technology, a type of advanced civilization, but a totally different one to ours. So a lot of people who uphold this modern world and, you know, the orators and speakers of academia would look back and go, well, that's not technology. Ha ha ha, it's ridiculous. But when you look at it through a different lens, it does seem to feel like a technological, almost like archeo Tesla tech, like stone Tesla tech.
Yeah. Oh, that's
you know, same with the obelisks in Egypt. The obelisks. Yeah. Archeo Tesla. Archeo Tesla technology.
Good.
Thank you.
Well, it's kind of like, you know, they're again, it's, you know, with volume comes a regression in quality, right? So back then there probably weren't as many structures. More people are focused on one big thing. You know, a civilization is focused on building these things. Whereas now, I doubt, you know, if I'm like, oh, I'm going to build a home, I doubt my contractor and the builders are going to be like, well, let's make sure we align this with the, you know,
exactly.
They're just going to throw up, you know, wood and whatever, and just try to get it done as quickly as possible. So I think we just, with volume and as many people as we have on Earth, we just sort of lost track of these things. We've kind of gone inside, which I agree. If you've you know, been raised in a city and you're, you know, with all the light pollution and you barely see nature, you're just so connected and you're afraid of getting out of that bubble of connection, you know, especially now with cell phones and everything, right? People are afraid to kind of get out of these pockets of civilization, and we have lost our connection with Earth. I think people forget that we're on a spinning rock, spinning in this vast open space. And I agree, there needs to be moments of that. And I think individually we can do that, but as a society, that's going to be a really hard, you know, that's going to be a really hard struggle.
You're not wrong about the like the astronomy as well, because you got to consider the light pollution we have now versus then. Obviously, then there was zero light pollution. Could you imagine how those night skies would have looked everywhere?
God.
So that was their television, that was their theater. So they would have observed the stars with incredible keenness for a long time. And so, you're not wrong, and that's why I agree with you in terms of not always stripping this away from human ingenuity and applying an intelligence from another, you know, planet or an alien race, because we're incredible, man. We really are. And we've become so lazy in this culture. And, you know, there are amazing people doing amazing things today. But in general, we're just such a throwaway, fast production, mass manufacturing culture. And we're poisoning our own bodies. And, you know, we're just not in alignment with that. And they were. So we probably can't even really comprehend the level of consciousness that requires 10,000 people to get together to construct something, or, you know, like that level of kind of group intentionality doesn't really exist anymore, unless you're building a massive, you know, project for housing or something, and then that's hardly a spiritual endeavor, is it? You know, so we've lost that, and that's again why we don't necessarily recognize this type of advancement when it is kind of staring us in the face, because we're in such a different type of world. We just don't really recognize that as anything other than pretty stone structures and amazing monuments that must have just been tombs or spiritual veneration. But the more we advance, the more we're able to look back at these things with technology and go, oh my God, like that was actually really, really impressive. That doesn't make sense. And, you know, I think we're just going to see more and more of that, more and more of that.
Yeah, no, that's well said. We'll kind of start to taper out here, but
Mm,
I would say that, when you were talking about Atlantis and
mm.
potentially what's in Egypt and all this, I forgot I wanted to bring this up because I think that's a great example of like lost history, and one that's provable is Alexander the Great, right? And the destruction of,
Yeah,
what was it, the Library
the Library of
of
Alexandria.
Alexandria, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. And think about let's just think about how many of those instances happened that we don't know about, right? Like, I mean,
exactly.
even as most recently in the Middle East, you had, I don't want to get into politics or anything, but you had different groups going and destroying
Oh
old
man,
artifact,
huge.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that had to have happened throughout history too when cultures took over, and how much we lost to history and knowledge is honestly
Well,
unquantifiable, probably.
this is such an important thing to bring up because like alongside natural, like geological trauma and cataclysm destroying evidence, the deliberate suppression of evidence and the destroying of evidence
Yeah,
is another thing that has to be looked at. And I like in my
yeah,
recent video, if people want to check it out, that's kind of what I'm diving into is the history of suppression and the different groups of organized religion over time that formed and created councils that removed books and removed canon and took this
yeah,
stuff away from people. And so there's been an incredible amount of suppression over time in the Library of Alexandria, Alexander the Great, and Julius Caesar as well, the siege of Alexandria, and also the Serapeum, which is the area of where is that? That's in the Serapeum is in bum, 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 bum. It's next to the Doja Pyramid. I've forgotten the region of Egypt, but the Serapeum, Saqqara, the Saqqara Desert. The Serapeum is this incredible subterranean area where you've got these gigantic black boxes, these sarcophagus. They attribute them to being sarcophagus for bulls, these Apis bulls that were apparently sacred to a specific cult in that area. But these things are insane. I mean, they're machined to these incredibly precise angles and right angles, and they're carved out these incredibly hard blocks. But either way, the Serapeum was also raided and burned down, and like a lot was stolen from that area. The Library of Alexandria was like the greatest synthesis of ancient knowledge in the entire world. I mean, there was amazing ones in India as well. India had its own Library of Alexandria. If people want to look it up, it's quite interesting. Just type into like Chat GPT or something. Can you list all of the different Library of Alexandria style destructions throughout time that we know of? And there's quite a few, and they're around the world. So
wow,
countless amounts of knowledge has been taken away and then suppressed again with the apostolic archives, 53 miles of shelving to hold all of this
yeah,
classified history that we're not allowed access to. And one of the things I've been kind of diving into a bit more is giants and the implications of larger humanoid beings, because that was one thing that
oh yeah,
I was not on it, man. Like I was not on that. And then like the more I've been looking into this subject, and especially these stories of the Nephilim and the cross-cultural references to giant beings, I think that there's something to it. And then you look at these huge sites and how were they built, how were they
sure,
constructed, and
oh,
yeah, the stories of giants, and even into like the 1800s where you had like the Smithsonian and implications of cover-ups in the burial mounds of America. There's
mhm,
something to it. Like there is something to it. I'm not willing to just state my claim on like giants roaming the land, but it is really interesting. And there's like that one
yeah,
quote at the beginning of Genesis. Not that I'm quoting the Bible, but it's just again interesting. Like this one quote, and then it doesn't come back to it, where it's like the gods of men came and lay with the women and created the Nephilim, and like this was they were roaming the lands at this time and times after that. And then it's just like
yeah,
anyway, and on with the Bible. It's
yeah.
like, wait a minute, you can't just cut me off there, dude. What are you talking about? So like, yeah, the Nephilim is an interesting one, and like, was there a larger race of beings than the Sumerian Anunnaki? These stories that are reflected back into ufology, we incorporate that into the canon of the UFO subject as well, and I think it's worth considering. Like, not just laughing away. It's definitely worth considering.
Why not?
Yeah,
Well, if we go scale the other way, we talk about humans that were a little smaller. Why couldn't
yeah.
there be massive race of people that were gigantic Goliaths, if you will, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so many civilizations teach about this, man.
sure,
Like this ancient
sure,
race of giants. And actually,
sure.
one last thing before we wrap up is a pretty interesting little piece of history. This area of Peru called Sacsayhuaman kind of sounds like sexy woman. And it's one of the coolest places in the world. It's an incredible megalithic. Honestly, I can't say it without hearing that in my head. You know what I mean? It's like, try not to say it that way, but it's really hard not to say it that way. But it is one of the most impressive sites in the world. And we attribute it to the Incas, to the Inca civilization that was around that area. But this is just one of those classic cases of like, what is going on with this model that's been put forward primarily by the West? Because it's like Western historians and archaeologists go over there, they find this place, they attribute it to the Incas. The locals and the shamans and the people who actually lived there, the elders of the tribes and the communities, said, no, that's not from the Incas. They built some of the structure around it, but this was found. This was a far older, lost civilization of giants. It was giant beings that constructed these. And like when you look at Sacsayhuaman, I mean, it is just completely insane. I mean, you know, nothing really like it exists. This is the best example of this cyclopean stone building. And, you know, theories are abound in regards to how they actually managed to do that. And so, you know, the Western world takes this assumption from themselves that this was the Incas, ignores the elders and the shamans of the indigenous cultures, and teaches us in school that the Incas built these places. And then when someone like Graham Hancock goes on TV and says, well, actually, I've been talking to the shamans and the elders and the people of this civilization, and they say that it was not the Incas, it was a lost civilization, Rolling Stones calls him a racist. Like, I'm sorry, explain to me how paying attention to the indigenous story and respecting the indigenous story is racist, and you taking your own idea and applying it and teaching it isn't racist. Like, you're ignoring their story, you're ignoring the indigenous claims. And that's another thing, is that we need to like maybe take more seriously the indigenous myth, the indigenous story, because so much of that, including in America with the Native Americans, we just ignore it and we just consider it to be, you know, kind of a spiritual message or metaphor. And then these constructions and these building sites pop up, and it's just like, well, there seems to be a level of evidence to suggest that this lost civilization, perhaps of larger beings than us, and maybe still humanoid, but just larger. Who knows? Maybe there was more oxygen on the planet at that point. I don't know. But like, there's something that's going on that's globally referenced, alongside a flood. You know, global flood. That's everywhere. Sure. 200 countries, 200 civilizations or more.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, you're not.
Sorry,
wrong.
I know I go on and on and on. I need to.
Please, are you kidding me? No. You're here to talk, man. I'm here to listen. So I'm happy you're
all right.
Passionate.
As long as I'm not bashing your head in with it.
No. Are you kidding me? I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by all this, man. That sucks about Graham Hancock. He should not be getting that. Did
you see what happened to him when he got? Because literally when he put out Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, like this big series that's kind of go. Have you seen that, by the way?
Yeah, I haven't seen. I've seen only 2 episodes of season 2, but I saw all of season 1. I just need to catch up. But I knew there was some pushback, and I've heard him talk about it on
crazy,
Rogan.
Dude. It was like
the racism angle.
Yeah, like the Guardian, the main, like, you know, like the Rolling Stones, New York Times, like all the mainstream media out of nowhere were like, he's pushing far right ideology. It's like, you know, it's like leading into. Do you know why? It's because of Atlantis and because of the Germanic neo-Nazi ideology towards Atlantis. Because a lot of the kind of like far right, hardline right wing groups in like places like Germany hold to the Atlantis theory about the Hyperboreans and how the Germanic race was part of that. That's what Hitler was interested in. Like, you know, the SS were obsessed with this whole idea of them being like a seed race from this great Atlantean empire. So that's like, it's so unfair though, because it's like, yeah, well, just because they touched on it doesn't mean it's not real as like Atlantis existing. And so, you know, you get thrown into this promoter of far right wing ideology, and that's what happened to Graham Hancock just for paying attention to indigenous stories. It's just nuts. Completely crazy. And they show their hand. They show their hand when they do stuff like that. And when they 100%. Say it's the most dangerous thing on Netflix, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to watch it, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to watch it. Exactly.
It's the first thing I did.
I don't think people understand what racism is anymore.
No, not anymore, man. Not anymore.
They've lost. Yeah, I experienced.
It really felt like we got rid of that in the 90s.
Totally
like, I thought we were done with that by the 90s. It kind of felt like everyone had kind of sorted out racism and homophobia, and it was all. And then suddenly we come back to everyone's a racist, everyone's a homophobe. It's like, where does this come from? This rise and fall in sensitivity and policing speech. You know, at one point we had to have trousers on piano legs because it was considered naked without the trousers. And now it's like we're in the same period where you can't say anything and everyone's banning you. So, you know, that's that's another thing that can just you can just
Well,
talk about
I
that for
get
a
that
while.
about the piano because anytime I see a grand piano, I get pretty
You
turned
get
on.
very, very,
I
very
get
aroused by it.
pretty, yeah, I get pretty turned on, bro. You should see me around a violin. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
even funny.
It's not good. All right.
No,
Well,
yeah,
I
it's
won't
not
take you to
good.
an
Yeah,
orchestra. I
yeah.
won't do that. Too much for you.
Um, oh, that's insanity.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what's happening
I
with
don't
the
know, man.
world, and I just stay out of it because I'm just like, this is so beyond like just reason that I
Yeah,
just there's no point of even interacting with it because clearly you're dealing with people who are unreasonable and disingenuous. You're never gonna get anywhere with that kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
conversation. You know what I mean? People are
No.
just going to mudsling with this sort of thing, and it loses its value, right? When you call everyone a racist,
Yeah, dude.
racism loses its value. And
Exactly.
what I mean by that is real racists get to
Yeah.
slip by in the shadows because, well, everyone's a racist. So
Hmm.
it becomes where's Waldo. So you got to be real careful of calling someone a racist. And usually it's people that have never experienced racism.
Yeah,
Those
for
are the
sure.
people calling other people racist because it's like, whoa, wait a second. That's not racism. You can just say
Hmm.
they have a different opinion about things half the time. These are just different theories that why can't they be looked at? That's what I don't get. Like, you don't have to agree with them, but why actively try to cancel them or shut them down or
It's
suppress
just, I
them,
mean, but
right?
it's been like that throughout history, right? I mean, the only
Sure,
exception
sure.
now is we're not burning people alive for it. So I
Yeah,
guess we've improved in some regard. You just get
yeah.
cancelled online
We
instead of
burn them
tied to a
online.
stick. Yeah, you get burnt
Yeah, yeah,
online. Literally, that
yeah,
is the new public execution: is to be,
yeah,
cancelled and
yeah,
embarrassed or humiliated online. But yeah, I mean, this is just a tried and true element of human psychology. Once we became like civilizations, we argue and bicker, and we just can't move past things when they get debunked, especially in like the academic and scientific institutions. And think of people like Galileo and others that were locked away for
100%.
their incredibly damaging ideas. So it's not changed. It's not really changed all that much, which is quite depressing. And I was actually speaking with Dr. Salvatore Pais about that recently, like in terms of he was just lamenting about the state of exotic research, and pushing the
Yeah,
boundaries has become much harder now, which is so disappointing. You'd think that when we're on the threshold of all these different innovations with AI and supercomputers, that people would be more willing to push the boundaries in science and physics, but he feels like it's just restricting. So we do live in a strange period where there is change, but there is also a lot of upholding of the status quo that needs to shift. And one of my favorite quotes from Terence McKenna was that the job of the human species is to transform itself from a camel into an F-16 mid-flight. And I love that because it is true. We're like this big, heaving
yeah.
mass, and we need to streamline. We're going faster and faster through time. Innovation is happening so quickly that we can barely even keep up with it. I'm on the pulse of this stuff, and I can barely keep up with where things are going with AI, and all of this is happening very fast. And it does feel like the pace is increasing. So the instability and like the kind of inadequacy of the structures has to be removed. Otherwise, it's just going to blow off from the forces that are being encountered as we fly through evolution. That was kind of what he was trying to visualize: is you got to turn from this slumbering camel into a jet fighter so you can fly through this hyper acceleration, because nothing
Sure.
else on this planet is doing what we're doing. We are the hyper acceleration of evolution on Earth. So where that
Yeah.
goes, I don't know. But I don't know about you, dude, but I literally can't imagine 5, 10, 15 years into the future. I feel like we're on the precipice of some pretty incredible quantum leaps.
100%. Yeah, my
Yeah,
wife and I were talking about that late last night, one of those late night patio
yeah.
conversations, you know what I mean? Just
The
smoking a few
best, the best.
cigarettes, talking about, yeah, my wife's just saying the same thing of AI and where society's going and how it's just happening at a pace that we can't keep up with, The car is getting too far ahead of the dog for it
Yeah,
to
man.
catch up, right? Like it's becoming it what it's going to get so it's like a fishing line. It just gets thrown out
Yeah,
way
just
too far that you can't control, right? It's out of control. And how do we control it? It's almost like I don't think we can. I don't
I
know
don't think
who's
you
going
can
to do it,
just sit
right?
back and let's see where this all
Yeah.
goes.
What else do we do? There's no
Yeah.
way to
Or just,
there's not
do
one
do
force.
do what we do and just comment on it and try and like let
Yeah.
people
Oh
know
yeah.
that things are
Yeah.
going on, and like, hey, did you know that this really crazy thing is
Yeah.
going on? Like that's what we do. Like that's ultimately what I think I do is it's just about, looking for the most interesting stuff that's happening in this world right now that challenges a consensus and a status quo, and like talking about it. Like let's talk
Sure.
about it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that you're spreading your wings into other areas because it, like I said, it really does all correlate, man. Like the more you get into deep history, the more you start realizing, the wheels of Ezekiel and all this crazy stuff that was going on in the past. It's happening now, today, still.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I've always been interested in my personal life, but
Yeah.
bringing it into vetted,
Yeah, exactly.
it's kind of narrow. But I want to, which is why I call vetted, and not like UFOs.
Right. Which is a good thing to do. You don't want to pigeonhole yourself like that.
Yeah, I knew that from the beginning, but I thought this would be the first, my next chef. So I think in terms of food, so it's like I don't want to say a moose bouche because it's gone beyond that. I'm in the appetizer area, but I want this to be a 10-15 course meal. I don't just want to focus on one thing. And I do want to get into more of the stuff, and having conversations like this with you really pushes me to want to cover more of the stuff. And coincidentally, my audience, vetters, have been telling me, oh, we don't mind if you cover this stuff. We like it too, because typically if you're interested in this, you're interested in a lot of
that's what I found.
Things,
That's what I
right?
found. Consciousness and history. It all wraps up. Up.
Yeah, man. Well, look, Jay, this was awesome, dude. Thank you so much for coming on.
We'll have to do another one at some time.
Oh,
come on my
man.
show. We'll have a chat.
I'm in, man. Well, look, let the people know how to, stay in contact with you, where to watch you. I'll definitely put all your links in the description for sure.
Mm-hmm. Very simple. Like I said to you, dude, I'm so bad with my social media. So it is quite literally YouTube and X. That's it. You want to find me? I'm on YouTube and X. My X is doing pretty well. I'm at like almost 250,000 followers on X now. So if you want to join that, like that was like, again, Joe Rogan boost, like cheeky little Joe Rogan boost. Did not slow me down, but like basically the Project Unity on X, the Project Unity, and then Project Unity on YouTube. That's it. That's all I've got. And if you want to become a Patreon, you do get access to our Discord channel and early access to content. So that's a good way to support me and just be slightly ahead of the curve before it gets released publicly. So check that out and watch my videos, support me, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you again, Patrick. It's been great.
Absolutely, man. All right, brother. Thanks again.
All right. Take care.